The Samsung Galaxy Note 9 and the Apple iPhone XS Max are two of the biggest and most expensive mainstream smartphones on the market. The Galaxy Note 9 starts at $1,000 and goes all the way up to $1,250 for the 512GB model. The iPhone XS Max starts at $1,100 and goes all the way up to a pretty staggering $1,450 for the same amount of storage as the fully maxed out Note 9. These phones aren't cheap by any stretch of the imagination, but you do get a lot for your money. The Galaxy Note 9 and XS Max both offer fantastic build quality with metal and glass designs, but I have to admit I like the rounded design of the iPhone better. It's more comfortable and easier to manage than the sharp boxy feel of the Note 9. You're also getting top of the line specs with a Snapdragon 845 and 6 to 8 gigabytes of RAM on the Note 9 and Apple's A12 Bionic chip on the XS Max. In day-to-day use, the Note 9 and XS Max are very fast when it comes to launching apps, multitasking, or playing games, and they both feel very fluid, but Apple's touch response is still second to none. The Note 9 performs great, but the touch response on the iPhone XS Max just makes everything feel so much more instantaneous, which says a lot about the advantages they have when it comes to vertical integration between their hardware and software. In terms of overall hardware, they're actually kind of similar. They both have dual speakers, IP68 water resistance, and wireless charging. They also both have big, bright, and beautiful AMOLED displays that go nearly edge to edge, but Samsung manages to do it without a notch. The Note 9's display is 6.4 inches with a resolution of 2960 by 1440, and the XS Max's screen is slightly larger at 6.5 inches, but it doesn't pack quite as much resolution. In everyday use though, I couldn't really spot a difference in sharpness. There are some major differences between these two phones, and depending on how much you care about them, it could matter a lot or not matter that much at all. The Note 9 comes with expandable storage, a fingerprint sensor, and a headphone jack, none of which are available on the iPhone. Instead of a fingerprint sensor, Apple's pretty much gone all in with Face ID, and I like Face ID. It's very fast and reliable and works in most situations, but in situations where it doesn't work, I kind of wish there was a fingerprint sensor because entering in your passcode is kind of annoying. The biggest and most major difference is of course the S Pen. This has been the signature feature of the Note line ever since the original Galaxy Note, but it's never been a reason as to why I've ever used a Galaxy Note as a daily driver. I've personally never found it to be all that useful, but you can use it for productivity purposes, and this year Samsung added Bluetooth functionality so it can kind of work as a magic wand of sorts for pausing and playing music or remotely taking a photo with the camera. On paper, the cameras on the Galaxy Note 9 and XS Max seem pretty similar. They both have dual 12 megapixel cameras with a secondary telephoto zoom lens and optical image stabilization on both lenses. The Note 9 does have that mechanical aperture though for letting in more light and creating a shallower depth of field, while the aperture on both lenses of the iPhone are fixed. They also are both capable of taking portrait mode photos, and now the iPhone lets you adjust the blur after the fact, which has been available on Samsung phones since the Note 8. The Note 9 and XS Max do a pretty excellent job with separating the subject from the background, but when taking portrait mode photos of people, the Note 9 tends to over-soften the details in people's faces, and skin tones are much more washed out when compared to the iPhone. The Note 9 and XS Max handle themselves very well in pretty much every lighting situation, but the XS Max has much better dynamic range, giving you a lot more detail in the shadows and highlights. This can probably be attributed to Apple's new Smart HDR feature, which stacks a bunch of photos together for better exposure and detail. The Note 9 also tends to skew towards a warm look, which doesn't look quite as attractive as the iPhone's more neutral color tones. The software experiences on these two phones are obviously not going to be the same. The Note 9 is running Android 8.1 Oreo with Samsung's custom skin, and the iPhone XS Max is running the latest iOS 12. Samsung software has gotten much better over the past couple of years that I don't mind using it exactly the way it is out of the box, and there are some advantages to using it like having Samsung Pay, but there are some bad sides as well, like the duplicate apps and Bixby. If you've used an iPhone before, iOS 12 is going to feel very familiar. Aesthetically, it pretty much looks the same as the last few versions of iOS, but this year's update was focused on better performance and refining the OS. iOS 12 is quicker at launching apps, quicker to open the camera, and the keyboard pops up slightly faster. Notifications are now bundled together by app so it doesn't feel so cluttered, and iOS 12 finally shows screen time numbers and breaks it down on a per app basis so you can see how much time you're spending within each app. We've seen these features on Android already, but it's still nice to have them on iOS. If I had to pick which one I like better, I'd have to go with the XS Max, which might surprise a lot of you guys, but here's why. I personally don't use the S Pen all that much, so it's not a huge selling point for me with the Galaxy Note, and having used so many Android phones without a headphone jack this year, it doesn't really bother me all that much that the iPhone doesn't have one. I also prefer the image quality from the iPhone. Don't get me wrong, the Note 9 takes amazing photos, but the iPhone just manages to take ones that look even better. So that pretty much concludes this comparison between the Galaxy Note 9 and iPhone XS Max. Let me know which one you would choose down in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and check out the website for more in-depth coverage, as we are your source for all things Android.